Welcome to Workplace Culture, podcast that we've started. Well, gosh, it's been about a year and a half now that we've been doing this. My name is Dawn Wood, and I have worked in corporate America. I have worked in property management, in the floral business, and in the entertainment business as a singer-entertainer. And unfortunately, in my many years of working, I have experienced some horrible experiences and experienced my own horrible experiences, such as sexual harassment, discrimination, toxic workplaces. And then what our topic is for today is talking about accessibility. And so just some stories, experiences about those type of errors that I have noticed and my own experiences as well. And with me today is my dear friend, Priscilla Yeager. I met Priscilla, 2017, 2018, I believe it was. It was a suggestion to meet her. And if you watched any of our other videos, you've seen the entire story of nitty gritty. But Priscilla had an aerial yoga studio, and that's how I first met her. And we've been really great friends ever since. And she's been so helpful. In fact, she has many plethoras to her business, not only yoga, but also helping businesses create websites. And so Priscilla, I'm going to just give you the floor to give a little introduction about yourself and what it is that you do. And of course, folks can find you on www.sillywellness.com.
Yeah, thank you, Dawn. So you speak of me so well every time. It's like you nailed it. Yeah, I'm Priscilla, and as Dawn had mentioned, aerial yoga was kind of where we met. And I have evolved over the years to really support people with getting their businesses off the ground, especially healers, people that run yoga studios. And also, since COVID days, it's like where everything got shut down, how do we get online and help continue to spread all across the globe our messages? And when Dawn approached me about this idea of a podcast, it was a for sure yes to helping her get this going. And we've been doing it. Yeah, it's amazing. We've been doing it for a year. I love, love, love collaborating with you, Dawn. And we both really met on these moments throughout, many, moments where we talked about workplace environments. And it's definitely been a topic. It's why I left the corporate world and decided to become an entrepreneur, because I just got so done with all of the, I call them rules, bullshit rules, all these rules that, are just so bureaucratic. And I just decided it was time to set myself free. But it is very much a passion of mine and of Dawn's to where, what better platform than a podcast to get people to maybe, learn something new, and how can we spread the ripples of creating better work environments for all. So thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you. So October is Disability Awareness Month, and so we thought it would be the perfect topic for this month. We do these podcasts quarterly, and I was very excited to do this particular podcast. Oddly enough, in January, I fell and broke my kneecap into 4 pieces. Rushing around like a dingbat, trying to get, go this. I was actually in a Pilates class trying to rush out to go to another appointment, and slipped on the ice the one day that we had ice in the Seattle area. And I had a trip to Hawaii planned like 4 weeks after that. So that's the only thing that I could think of is, please tell me that it's just dislocated. But no, of course, I had to do it right, break my kneecap in 4 places. So the wonderful thing, I think, sometimes things happen to us in life that give us greater compassion for others. And so the one thing that I can say that was good that came out of it, I had a fantastic medical team that were wonderful. But when I went to Hawaii, which my surgeon said, you can go to Hawaii, but you're going to be in a wheelchair. You're not going in the ocean. So a lot of the adventure plans that I had, of course, got tabled. And I was in a wheelchair with my best friend wheeling me around. And just the way that people reacted, like just kept walking, like I wasn't even there. It was like I was invisible. And it really broke my heart to think, here I have this tiny, tiny little view compared to what people that are, truly disabled and truly having to experience this every day, with people just going about their business and running their businesses without any feeling or compassion to these folks that are actually dealing with this on a day-to-day basis. So, of course, it got me thinking, how can my workplace be aware and supportive to follow employees or fellow employees, coworkers, colleagues, and clients with disabilities? So, whether it's my workplace is fantastic now, but for those who will be watching this podcast, I think it's a good place for us to really start to think about this. And when we're thinking about accessibility and inclusivity. And so a lot of times in my experience, I have found that companies will want to do the very bare minimum risk management, CYA. That's what they're looking for. And so in that case, we start at baby steps, right? With suggesting things to our employers. What are the legal and ethical foundations of having an inclusive workspace that is compassionate and caring about those with disabilities? So the very first thing that I would recommend that you and your employer do is to Google the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. That sets legal requirements. So again, bare minimum, make sure that that is researched. We've talked about the EEOC on almost every single, and in fact, I think on every podcast that we have had, the Equal Employment Opportunity Compliance, which does deal with all, discrimination, sexual harassment, and discrimination as far as disabilities go, as well as ageism, which is something that I learned too, that if you're over the age of 40, it's possible that your employer could be discriminating against you or not want to hire someone that's over 40. So one of the things that I learned when I was looking for my new job is to stop putting things like over 20 years experience and yet blah, 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 because that automatically put me into this other category of, being old, I suppose. And so, just those things, it's unfortunate that we have to like play tricks to get around the system and things like that. And so I think it's important to really do a deep dive on the EEOC, what they cover and what their recommendations are. They are also willing to work with employers as well. I myself have had a case with the EEOC, and they were phenomenal in working with the employer. It's not like that, they're suing the employer, but they are actually trying to educate, and they offer education as well. And so then the ethical responsibility that every company has to create fair access to opportunities. And then it also builds morale for the team. And so then we've got why inclusion matters. So 1 in 4 adults live with some sort of disability. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, right? Improve employee morale and productivity. So in my opinion, if you have a workplace that is safe, that is diverse, that is inclusive, your employees are going to have a great morale because they're not going to have to deal with toxic workplace environment. They're not going to have to deal with discrimination. Then you're also going to expand your talent pool, and you're going to foster innovation because you're going to open up your talent pool to more people. And then it also demonstrates your commitment to diversity and inclusion. So then we come to, if we get the employer to go beyond that CYA and risk management mode and delving deeper into the practical steps and maybe a game plan for moving forward. So one of the things is, seems like, of course you would do this, but you would be surprised how many businesses don't ensure physical accessibility. And the story that I was sharing with Priscilla earlier is that my mom called me to tell me that she took my stepfather to a dermatologist appointment. And it was a dermatologist that I recommended because it's who I go to. And she's like, do know that, if they find skin cancer, they have to send you upstairs to cut out the skin cancer and then you go back downstairs and then see if you have to go back upstairs again to keep cutting out the skin cancer is the process that they do. Well, the majority of their patients are elderly, and there's like one, two, three sets of stairs to go upstairs. Well, both my mother and my stepfather have, mobility issues. They walk with walkers, and they're like, are we supposed to climb upstairs? There's no elevator, no ramp. And it just blew my mind that in a medical facility, this wasn't even a thought. So then the other thing is to offer workplace accommodations, flexible schedules, and then assistive technology. And then to provide training on disability awareness and sensitivity. So I think it's very important, even if at the bare minimum of CYA risk management, that there should be training on anti-sexual harassment, anti-discrimination, and disability awareness and sensitivity. So that even if you have some, employees that are not aware or compassionate, at least they are aware of what the law is. And then, of course, use inclusive hiring practices. There are a plethora, and again, if you Google this, you can find a lot of information on using accessible software and communication tools, ensuring that the digital content meets the WCAG, which is the Web Context Accessibility Guidelines standards, providing captions for videos. So if you have someone that's hearing impaired, that they would be able to understand with it. Everybody these days, especially if you're working remote or hybrid, I know my day is full of Zoom and Teams meeting. Well, we turn on transcription so that A, the meeting can be record and transcribe, and B, those that have any kind of hearing disability can actually see what is being said. And then there's kind of at the end, with AI being involved, AI will kind of take all of everything that was said and put it into really nice notes for the person that's watching so they can get a little bit better understanding of if there's action items and what was being discussed. And that kind of leads us right into the offering alternative formats. So it's something that is screen reader friendly. And then actually building an inclusive culture, you want to encourage open communication and feedback. Make sure that you're listening to what your employees are saying. Celebrate diversity through events and initiatives. And I know the employer that I'm working for right now does a fantastic job. Every month is some month that is either like mentor month, or just October, of course, is Disability Awareness Month. We also have Juneteenth and Pride Month. And so every month there's at least one thing that is being celebrated, and information on how it started, how the day was a holiday or whatever. There's all this information that is sent out to us, and it's also celebrated and discussed in meetings as well, so that we all feel everybody feels included. There's a very diverse workforce, and I think that really creates a great morale within your team. And then creating employee resource groups for disabilities. I think if you have, and just put it out there, you don't have to, call on specific people in your team, but putting it out there, we're creating this employee resource group. We want your input. And then promoting leadership, accountability for inclusion. And then if we can move that employer into the call to action, what are we going to do to truly improve the workplace? Reviewing workplace accessibility regularly, I think, is important. And if we go back to that example of my parents going to the doctor, how could that have been missed is my question. But I mean, that is something that I think we all need to look at in our workplace is there accessibility? If somebody had a wheelchair, how would they get upstairs? I mean, all those types of things, or maybe kind of moving the office around. Maybe you only have a certain lab things upstairs, but everything else can be done downstairs where it's fully accessible. If the problem is you can't install, I know elevators are quite expensive, but maybe a ramp, trying to kind of be creative in how you can be more inclusive in your workplace. And then provide ongoing disability inclusion training. So I believe a healthy workplace has training. When I first started my job at the current job that I have, before I could even get into my training, I had like a week-long EEOC training, and I was over the moon because of the experiences that I have had and what I've seen, how people that I've worked with and cared about very deeply, how they've been treated. And I was so excited that I like reached out to our HR person and to the recruiter, and I'm like, I am so excited. And they're like, okay, about doing EEOC training. But the amount of companies that don't even touch on that or even breathe the word EEOC is vast. So I think that it's very important to make sure that you've got ongoing EEOC training, of course, as well as disability inclusion training. And then, of course, actively seek input from employees with disabilities. I mean, they're going to be able to tell you the best of the things that they need and be open to the things that they need to help them be more productive and creative and feel more comfortable at work. And then, very important, always make inclusion a core value of your company and of your team. That should be something, I mean, it's infectious. Once that is adopted within a company, I think they are going to be, for one, your business is going to be better because people are going to think more highly of the company, but also you create that inclusion and that really good feeling and morale amongst your employees. So important thing to remember is, when we see like a disability sign normally, or even like handicap parking, what we think about is a person in a wheelchair. And I think it's important to note that some disabilities may look like that. Some disabilities may not look like that. You can look at a person that looks just like me or you, not in a wheelchair, and they could have a vision impairment, they could have hearing impairment, mental impairment. And so it's important to remember and be compassionate that disabilities can look a variety of ways. And so one of the things that we talk about in all of our podcasts is that I am a huge fan of LinkedIn. I have met every one of our guest speakers on LinkedIn, and it's so exciting for me to see the enthusiasm and the evangelization of healthier workplaces. And so one of the folks that I have met on LinkedIn that is a great person to follow if you're on LinkedIn, I encourage you to reach out to Jenny Berry. She is from England. And then our guest for today is Wesley Ricks, who is a global accessibility and disability consultant. And Wesley, I'm so thrilled to have you on our show today. I just wanted to have you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background and what inspired you to be a global accessibility consultant.
Yeah, sorry, had to get off mute.
That's okay.
I'm so happy to be here too. I'm not sure, are you gonna keep the screen up or are we?
I can just, let's just get rid of that. Stop sharing. There we
Okay.
go. Whoops.
But my journey into this space is similar to others in the sense that I have a personal passion and kind of lived experiences. But it's been an interesting road. So I actually started my career in recruiting and learned kind of how to attract talent, best practices, and ensuring like a diverse candidate slate and making sure you're hiring, not lowering the bar, but widening the lens and considering all of your possibilities of talent that you can hire. And around this time, I started having kids, and my oldest child is actually autistic and she has a hearing impairment. And then my middle son, he's had a variety of just gastro issues. He's had a couple surgeries in his life and needs a pretty high level of support there. And he also has ADHD. And then my youngest son is autistic. He has more profound autism. So he's 4 and he's just kind of learning to really communicate now. Meets more of your stereotypical idea of autism, I guess I would say. My daughter more represents like a girl with autism, which we've only learned in recent years that they're totally different, which is why a lot of women have been misdiagnosed. But I started to kind of see what the employment outcomes were for people with disabilities, being that, like 85% of autistic college graduates are unemployed and they have degrees and great skills, but a big reason they don't get hired is because they're not a culture fit, right? Um, so I started to realize that and just thought, I've got to change something. So pivoted my career, moved into this space. I have a consulting business called Divergent Talent Consulting. And half of the focus is on working with employers to be more disability inclusive, to understand where they're at in their accessibility journey, and then also to get them to a place where they can not only attract disabled talent, but they can support that talent and retain them once they're in the door. And then the other half of my time, I do vocational rehabilitation in the state of Utah. So I work directly with people with disabilities on helping them find jobs. And we have 3 consultants at Divergent who focus on that. And what I'm really proud of is that there's a lot of actors in this space who kind of just try to get people in jobs and they're not a good fit. They don't have any skills to navigate, that workplace. And unfortunately, our workplaces still are very ableist. I think ableism is the last acceptable type of discrimination in corporate culture. So we're very intentional in working with those individuals on advocating for themselves and interviewing their employer just as much as the employer is interviewing them to make sure that it is going to be a good fit so that they can have psychological safety. But yeah, I know that was kind of long-winded, but happy to answer any
Not
follow-up.
at all. Not at all. So those are the services that you have. What do you have any like statistics or things that you have found as I'm not asking you to name names or anything, but as in your experience, have you found that employees are kind of reaching out to you and saying, gosh, my employer really needs help, or are employers becoming more open to this? I've just, from what I've seen in, the Seattle area, you would think it would be extremely progressive. But in my experience, it's like they don't even know the basic EEOC and a lot of things. It just blows my mind. I would expect, if I was in like a southern state that was very conservative, maybe, but I've been blown away to see the amount of employers that don't even follow the very bare minimum.
Yeah. No, it definitely is a problem, but it is something that is getting a lot more attention than ever.
Right.
I know that you mentioned the EEOC, and that is very like US, that is US focused.
Right.
Globally, there are even higher standards. Like in the European Union this June, a couple months back, was the start of the European Accessibility Act. And that basically enforces that any company that's operating in the European Union and serving customers there has to have accessible products and services. And so that can be software, but
Wow.
a majority of it is actually like physical things like bank machines and different environments that for so long, I mean, I've worked with some of the most genius people, but they're blind and they're like, I can't go take out my own money from the bank because it's not
Mhm.
like the teller machine. So
Right.
bar is really being raised, even in the US. To your point, there's the Americans with Disability Act, but then there's
Mhm.
also the EEOC that enforces that. There's new legislation that is coming down the pike later this year, early next year, and it is about HR accessibility. So, like your payroll system and time clock systems and anything that your employees would need to use needs to be accessible because we've seen that as a reason people aren't hiring people with disabilities. Well, we're going to have to go and buy all these new technologies and tools. So it's
Oh.
setting a new bar there. Um, but I would just say that yes, there are both sides that reach out to me, employers who, to what you said earlier, they just want to kind of CYA. They want to make sure
Mhm. Mhm.
every compliance box is checked. There's also employers who recognize that it's not just about compliance, it's not just about social responsibility, it's actually just good business. because
Right.
by 2030, there's supposed to be over 3.5 billion people who are going to use assistive technology. And if you are
Right.
building products and services that they can't even use, that's just throwing away like 13 trillion in disposable annual income that people with disabilities and their families bring to the table. So it's good business, it's good compliance, and also when you hire people from this community, they have higher retention rates, higher productivity, there's
Mhm.
higher innovation, more inclusion, and that's a fundamental thing that all of us want. All of us want to be included. And this community has spent their whole life being an afterthought. Like nothing was
Right.
designed with them in mind, no experiences, locations, and especially with how increasingly digital our economy is becoming, if people aren't building
Right.
accessible websites, they're not going to be able to navigate in the world. So I think it's awareness, but then it's also just a need in order for people with disabilities to even still be able to contribute in society with how digitized everything's becoming.
Absolutely. Do you think that you were talking about how Europe, how progressive it seems like they have become? Do you think that America will eventually be more, I don't know, more progressive in how they're maybe take a page out of the book of the what the Europeans are doing?
I hope so. I mean, a lot of Fortune 500 companies are in the United States.
Right.
And there was a recent audit that was done on all the Fortune 500 companies' websites. And I believe only like 1% had fully accessible
Wow.
websites. And these are some companies that are really like preaching that their products are accessible, but their employee experiences aren't accessible. And so
Right.
it just, yeah, it's something that needs a lot of work for sure. And I think businesses don't realize either. I was at the Disability In conference in July, and a colleague of mine is in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
We looked up a restaurant in advance. It said that it was fully accessible. Um, we get there and there's no ramp for her to get in. And they
Oh,
were talking about, oh, the doorways are wide and the bathroom's accessible, but it's like, what's the point of that if somebody can't even get in?
right.
And
Right.
so they didn't just lose her business, they lost all of our business.
Right.
We're not going to eat there without our party
So
member,
that you're
you know?
right.
So it was a good example of like, you add in this small thing that you think is a one-off, but it can really
Right.
impact your business if you're not accessible.
Absolutely. I totally agree. So, is it best for folks to reach you on LinkedIn, or do you have like a website that what
Yeah.
would be the best way to contact you?
Yeah, I post regularly on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
Um, And then I have a website as well. It's www.divergenttalentconsulting.com.
Right.
And you can also fill out a form if you're interested in either getting help finding a job or if you're interested in like a, a keynote or a session for your company. I will say, I always like to just put this out. There are prices on my website. If
Hmm.
that discourages anyone, this is something we're passionate about helping people still reach out. We find a price point that's right for you. So don't ever let that discourage you from reaching out and trying to get support.
I love that. Priscilla, did you have anything that you wanted to ask Wesley?
Yeah, I mean, touched on so many things, and it's definitely something that I'm constantly learning, even for myself. Like upping the game in the digital world is just such, especially for like healers and musicians, and it's like
Right.
sharing music or sharing songs, and it's like, yeah, just making sure that things are accessible on websites, I think is just so crucial. So I love that you spoke to that. And yeah, even I have so much to learn in this world. It's like, right, when you think you figure something out in the technological world, there's something new and it's constantly changing. So I feel like it's so important for people to, yeah, like find people that help and support us and coach us and help us really navigate the constant change and the constant flow and how to be considerate of all people. So yeah. Do you have
Absolutely.
any words of advice for people that are feeling like they, I work with a lot of people that are like just kind of in the beginning stages of like starting their career or starting their, healing business, and it's scary enough just to start, a business. And then all the fears come in of like, well, you got to get this and this and this, the checklists come in. So do you have any piece of advice you'd like to leave for maybe those that are listening and maybe on the verge of starting their very first website or starting to sell products and services on like what they should be really mindful of, or tools or resources?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. This is a common saying in the disability community, but it's everyone becomes disabled at some point. Some people are just quicker to do it. And this is something that impacts whether you're early on your accessibility journey or not. This is something that impacts every single person I know, whether they're a caregiver for an elderly parent, or they themselves are disabled, or they have a disabled child, or just interacting in the community. Like, it's 15% of the world's population. That's a very large amount of people. But what people don't realize is that 85% of disabilities are invisible. And so I think the first step is destigmatizing disability. It really just means you're not able to do something. Migraines are a disability. Depression is actually the leading disability globally. And it's because it's something that's going on with your body that is making it so that you can't do things. So I would destigmatize it and also recognize the older we get, we lose ability to walk, we lose ability to see, can lose ability to hear, and you don't realize until you are in that situation, like the example Dawn gave, you don't realize how much the world was not built for you in mind. And with that, people with disabilities are unfortunately just really good problem solvers, because their whole lives they've been navigating all these environments that weren't built for them. So again, just another plug to hire people from this community. They're phenomenal in many ways, but I would say just, recognize this isn't another person's problem. This is something that will impact you in one way or another in your life. And it also just, again, is good business. You build a product that anyone can use. Closed captioning, like we've talked about, curb cuts and sidewalks. I always talk about the curb cut effect, where that originally to have the sidewalks drop was for people with disabilities, but skateboarders and people who do deliveries and stroller pushers all benefit from that. Electric toothbrushes were made for people with disabilities who couldn't make that motion. And then everyone's like, wow, this is really convenient. Sorry, that clock is going off. But yeah, I would just say recognize it's good business all the way around, and it's the right thing to do.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Yes, agreed. Well, thank you so much, Wesley. I truly appreciate you being part of this podcast and celebrating this month with us. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you both. It was good meeting you.
You as well. And check out Wesley. Again, go on LinkedIn, find her, or else go to her website, Divergent.